Well, hello and welcome. Today we are going to talk about putting the wow back into dairy foods or into new dairy innovations, as well as making sure that those tried and true flavors deliver as promised, because we all know a disappointed consumer is most likely not going to be a returning customer of yours, and we don't want that to happen. So let's go ahead and jump in. I'm Donna Berry. I am a degreed food scientist who's been writing for the trade on ingredient technology and trends for the past 30 years. I have an e-newsletter called Daily Dose of Dairy, a website, berryondairy.com, and I contribute to Dairy Processing Magazine. Joining me today is Whitney Beam. She is the Senior Director of Marketing and Insights with Parker Products. So hello, Whitney, and why don't we jump in and you just tell us all a little bit about Parker real briefly?
All right. Thanks, Donna, for inviting me on today. I work for Parker Products, and we get to create really interesting toppings and inclusions that go into a lot of different applications, including dairy-based applications like ice cream and yogurt. You think about sprinkles, cookies, fudges, compound coating, all the things that deliver on texture and color and flavor. So it's a really fun time to be in the food industry and work with this company and this fantasy flavors and wow, especially with the younger consumers. We're getting some really interesting projects in our pipeline.
Well, great. Well, let's talk a little bit about those and jump kind of right into this. I want to bring up the concept of limited time offerings, or short, simply LTOs. Happen to be one of my favorite spaces within actually all of food and beverage. I mean, I think that LTOs create this urgency to purchase. You're at the grocery store and you're like, oh my gosh, it might not be here the next time. I have to buy it now. But in order to have that urgency to purchase, it has to have what I said is wow. On a local level, a lot of times dairies accomplish this through connecting with, sports events or annual things going on in the area. National brands do it on a larger scale, but it's all about that wow. So, what are your thoughts on that? How do you think people can bring wow in, and how does that play in with LTOs?
Yeah, lots of acronyms, right? LTOs, wow, all these pieces. The LTOs, or the limited time offers, are very exciting, and they're interesting ways to connect with consumers and bring some maybe untraditional flavors or seasonal flavors. You see a lot of seasonal LTOs. I think, across the board, you're seeing people wanting to have nostalgic connections,
Mhm.
regional connections. And so, how do you create wow or new experiences tied to a certain season or holiday or a memory from childhood? So, you're seeing lots of like 1980s and 90s inspired desserts. Also, a lot of pumpkin. We're hitting into pumpkin season. I
Ah,
just told somebody last week we do a lot of peppermint grind and peppermint flavored items. So we call it Christmas in July. The entire factory smells like Santa's workshop. But we all look forward to those drinks, and I think they bring us a little bit of comfort and excitement. There's some interesting research around LTOs too, not only just driving recognition to the brand and excitement, but also that shareable piece, especially with that younger generation. It's creating free marketing because people are taking pictures of it and sending it to their friends and making references to their friends and promoting it outside of traditional marketing. And so I think LTOs, you're going to see a lot more brands get creative with what they do. Co-branding is also super interesting, which we didn't talk about this, but sometimes taking really interesting flavors from different categories and kind of bringing them over into this category, I think you'll see as much as LTOs.
well, and with your ingredients, it's really, I don't want to say easy to make it sound too easy, but you've got a base product and you're just swapping out those extra little add-ins and inclusions that you offer, right?
Yeah, I laugh. It's never easy, right? We always think it's going to be
I know,
easy.
I had to say that. Because after all, wow upside down is mom, and that's not easy. We're wow.
No, it's not. So, but I do
So,
think, again, when we work with product developers at these dairies companies, we always try to figure out one, from an ingredient perspective, what works in your product,
mhm.
what's allowable. And then it's like, what kind of experience are you trying to deliver from a color and a flavor and a texture piece? Because people eat with their eyes. But we do have a lot of, I always say, our inclusions and our toppings, they're different like vehicles to deliver those experience. So it just seems like now they're kind of getting intergalactic vehicles, but
Well, that brings me to my next thing. So one of my favorites was there was a lot going on, but I was really happy that the dairy industry did step up to when we had our North American total solar eclipse in April, when really the country did shut down for the day because everyone was just so into the whole thing. But there was an ice cream company that came out with some really cool flavors that tied into that. And then there was even an Icelandic yogurt company that, though it had nothing to do with the eclipse, it was about the northern lights. And both of these companies relied on some edible glitter products. I mean, it was really extraterrestrial stuff, and that complements what my friends at Innova seem to have been really emphasizing lately. And this is this concept of fantasy flavors. And I think you touched on that just a little bit. So can you tell me a little bit more about these otherworldly flavors and how we can bring that into dairy?
Absolutely. In fact, that's funny you said that because we're running a series this week on our LinkedIn about fantasy flavors and all the ways you can deliver on that trend. 1 in 3 consumers are actively looking for these fantasy flavors, these different types of experiences. Again, it tends to kind of lean a little bit younger unless it has its nostalgic twist. But we've been working, you brought up glitter. So we do a lot of work. It's just interesting on what your brand is, what you need to deliver from an ingredient deck. Is it natural colors or can you play with artificial colors? But we've got like edible, kind of looks like slime, like edible glitter that we mix into it and it sparkles. We've got pop rocks that we can coat. And so you kind of get that sensory experience of being this like popping sensation. And you can just play with sparkles and glitter and different colors that cue different emotions. And so you're seeing a lot of that tie to kind of that LTO piece. Can you tie
Yeah.
it to an event? Can you tie it to an activity? Can you tie it to an experience? So I think there's lots of ways to incorporate that and push the envelope. But glitter, we've seen an uptick in even companies calling out things like moon and intergalactic and
Yep.
unicorn. And so there's fun ways to do that. So I always tell the customers, bring us your challenge. We are a custom ingredient house. We'd love to kind of accept that challenge and see if we can take you intergalactic.
Well, that I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, I mean, so ice cream truly is a great place for all of this innovation because it's frozen. I mean, it's frozen in time, so to say. It really does allow probably or invites, some really unique ingredients. But in the refrigerated space, there's still a lot of opportunity to get really creative. And I think that people sometimes shy away from it. But in my opinion, I've said this for a long time, there's a lot of white space in the refrigerated dairy dessert and alternative dairy dessert case. And I think that some of these ingredients would work really well in there. So any thoughts on that?
Yes, I would say, I worked primarily before I came with Parker. I worked in the dairy industry more on the milk and the cheese and the protein side for almost a decade. So kind of coming over to the sweet and the savory side and kind of looking from a toppings and inclusion, I agree. There's so much opportunity here. Top hats on a lot of these dairy based desserts. We've been talking to customers about, if you really want to protect that integrity of the ingredient, do a side card, do a top hat, do some sort of creative and innovative packaging so you can still maintain that texture. You can fat coat a lot of different types of, cookies and sprinkles. And so it can be in a substrate for a certain period of time, depending on what you're trying to deliver. And so you see different ice creams even have layers. I think there's a lot of inspiration in different categories that are adjacent: bakery, ice cream, dairy, confectionery, that you can get inspiration and say, how can I take this experience and bring it to this category? We went to this big ice cream tech show in the spring and they talked about, we had somebody from Circana come and speak. And I thought it was really interesting that he talked about, you're not really competing against another dairy company. You're competing for that share of wallet, or you're competing for that moment. So you're also competing against chips and you're competing
Mhm.
against different drive-through experiences. So how do you kind of look at the emotional drivers for those consumers and figure out how do you satisfy that? We've been doing more what I'd call spicy. So a
Okay.
little sweet, a little spicy. So you're seeing people kind of maybe push the envelope on the dairy case with how do you deliver on that? And so I just think there's a lot of, our chips, like we have this one ingredient that's super fun is we have a bark and inside of it has a potato chip.
Ooh, yum.
I know, right? So can you get salty and the sweet? Can you get the salty and the spicy in some fun ways? And I think a lot of times for food service, you think I'm going to take the picture and share this, and that's the way it's kind of Instagrammable. But I think there's some really ways that you can, bring treats home so people can entertain, or people can kind of take pictures and share that idea with their families as well.
Well, and everything you just said also works great with yogurt. I'd like to see a lot more interaction there. I mean, we've seen the dessert flavors with the whole milk yogurts, but I think spicy would work there too. So, I have a little bit of data that I'm actually going to share real quick here. It's from the folks over at Mintel, and it was specific about dessert trends. And I thought it was really interesting. The research showed that 48% of U.S. consumers, so basically half, say desserts and confections with familiar flavors are best, but half also want to see the other half new texture, new flavors, and it's all part of the eating experience with an emphasis on texture. And 24%, so basically 1/4 of US consumers say, and this is what you just mentioned, sweet, hot, and smoky flavors in desserts. Hot and smoky, that's kind of interesting there, but I could see like that smoked pineapple, just so there's so much opportunity. So what are your thoughts on that, Whitney?
I laughed because I was just working on 2 different customer projects today that had that spicy in it. So pineapple habanero, mango chamoy, even like we were looking at a strawberry black pepper. I think there's some interesting ways to do that. I also think TikTok. So we're doing this big research project I'm tipping my hat right now, but for next year for our big ice cream piece, we're doing a big research project around generations. And one of the things that has stuck out to me is this younger generation will search TikTok before they will search Google. And so you're seeing a lot of people do things, and I think brands even get inspiration for what consumers are doing. They have access to the product and they're doing interesting things. A lot of crazy things happening in cottage cheese. People are making cottage cheese based ice cream. There's some interesting toppers that you can do there. This swifey that opens the dairy category up for more dips and spreads for sandwiches, replacing like mayonnaise or different types of ideas. So I think from a product development perspective, especially for younger product developers, I think there's some really interesting new ideas and perspectives to bring to the development table and say, could we do this? What would this look like? So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but yes,
No,
definitely starting to see a lot of swiping.
I love the idea of cottage cheese because it's the original high protein dairy food. I'm a huge consumer, but I'm the one who's adding all the stuff to it. And of course, I kind of know how to do that, but the average Joe probably doesn't know, all the different things you could add to it. So, all right, well, we're going to wrap up here, but before we do that, it's impossible not to talk about one thing. It's kind of, the elephant in the room, the economics of the past couple years. And they've taken a toll on people's budgets, and people are more cost conscious, but I also know that taste reigns. And if you don't deliver on taste, and texture is something that people don't think about unless it's bad. But those are 2 really important things. So can you just talk a little bit about how Parker is a great investment to add that value to your product? Again, we'll wrap it all up and say to make consumers go, wow.
Yeah, it is the elephant in the room, especially with not only just, the dairy markets, but the cocoa markets. We're always talking, and inflation, we're always talking about cost and use. And I think that's the biggest surprise, a couple of years not working here and then coming into this industry or this topping and inclusion space. I've learned quite a bit over the last couple of years, and one of those is cost and use is still pretty minimal for the amount of impact it delivers. So think about toppings and inclusions as the wow. It's the sprinkle on top of the drink. It's the thing that stands out and catches your attention, but it's only usually 5, 10, 15% of the actual total cost and use. So when you think about it, we just did a big research study on sprinkles last year. And when you put a sprinkle into an ice cream, a milkshake, or a drink, it's 5 to 10%, but you're allowed to charge more, and the consumer is okay with that. So I would say as a product developer, you're always trying to cost optimize completely understand that. And we do have a range of products. So depending on where those cost constraints are, we can start there. But don't be afraid also to maybe blend in something that sparkles, something that glitters, something that ties to something. You know, you look at all these new movies that are launching, a lot of these co-branding opportunities, some of the nostalgic brands that are really getting traction in a lot of categories. They're able to charge more and their cost and use is still pretty small.
So, well, that's wonderful. I hope everybody who heard this today is walking away inspired. Thank you so much, Whitney. And you want to just let everyone know how to get in touch with you, and we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, great. Thanks again. I always love talking with you, Donna, about all things in the dairy industry. So make sure you're definitely following and watching Donna. I would say for Parker, please just follow us on Parker Food Group or Parker Products on LinkedIn. We post a lot of the information around fantasy flavors and different trends. And then parkerfoodgroup.com, or look me up on LinkedIn, Whitney Beam at Parker.
So,
Thanks for the time today.
all right, take care. Thanks, Whitney.